morning and aloha. Aloha. I'd like to welcome each of you to today's Health and Wellness Forum. Today's forum will focus on the caregiver journey and the challenges associated with managing the chronic illness of a loved one. I'm Lieutenant Colonel Matthew Guyman, Deputy Commander of Health Readiness here at Desmond Doss, and I will be the narrator for today's events. I would like to start by welcoming today's distinguished guest, Major General Retired and Mrs. Chin, Lieutenant Colonel Retired Matthew McCarville from the Hawaii chapter of AUSA, Ms. Iolani Foray from the Elizabeth Dole Foundation, Ms. Jennifer Kutowski, the Director of VA Pacific Island Healthcare System, and Ms. Fida Tahana Ellis, a caregiver and specialist with the Wounded Warrior Project. Please welcome Lieutenant Colonel Retired Matthew McCarville, the President and Chair of Hawaii's chapter of AUSA, to the podium.
Well, good morning. Colonel Guyman told me I had 1 minute, and I'd like to first just say thank you to the Association of United States Army Hawaii chapter for hosting this, and to our national folks for providing some of the funding for the meals today. But thank you mostly to our warriors and caregivers who are here today to share stories and to learn about some of the resources available and the newly funded resources through the VA. But let me use what I have remaining to say thank you to the man who organized and planned this event and has been the mover and shaker to make this happen. So Matt, if I could, please come on up here. I have a certificate of appreciation signed by General Retired Carter Ham, the Executive Director of the Association of the United States Army. Certificate of appreciation is awarded to Matthew Guyman.
Hey, thanks, Matt.
Back to you, Matt.
On my back? All right. Well, thank you, Matt. Next, I'd like to introduce the commander of the Desmond T. Doss Health Clinic, Colonel Dave Zimmerman.
All right. Well, good morning and aloha. Thank you very much for attending today's Health and Wellness Forum. You know, this took a lot of work to put on. We have a lot of great community partners, civilian partners from off installation that are here to give information and help our soldiers and our families. You know, welcome to our distinguished guests at the head table. We really appreciate your expertise and you being able to take time here today to share your knowledge and your stories. So why are we here? There are over 5 million caregivers in the United States, and over 1 million of those care for veterans who served after 9/11. Post 9/11 caregivers tend to be younger and are 4 times more likely to suffer from depression, and 1/3 are without health insurance. The caregiver journey can be demanding, each day requiring an increasing amount of physical and emotional strength. Caregivers' voices are all different, but they all share a similar story of struggle and resistance. To echo former Senator Elizabeth Dole and what she described as a clarion call to support military caregivers, it is up to us, those of us in this room and the people of goodwill across our great country, to answer the call. The caregiver journey that our panel experts will discuss today is vital to the care of our military families and the resilience of our caregivers, and will identify resources available through both government and non-government agencies. I'm also personally looking forward to hearing from the experiences of those in the audience today. Your candid thoughts will help showcase a number of topics that impact our caregivers and our wounded warriors and exceptional family members. Sergeant Major Laggiano and I are truly honored to represent the Desmond Doss Health Clinic here today and are very proud of the partnerships and teamwork to make this event happen. I want to thank the military leadership, medical professionals, soldier and family readiness groups, the AUSA Hawaii chapter, and all of our caregivers for attending today. Lastly, I look forward to seeing everyone Saturday down at the 10th Annual Wounded Warrior Canoe Regatta down in Waikiki, where Desmond Doss will take the title. Cool. Your health is our mission. Mahalo.
Thank you, sir. The goal of today's Health Symposium is to explore the caregiver journey and the challenges that caregivers experience daily, as Colonel Zimmerman noted. As many of you know, the journey is long, mentally and physically draining, and littered with daily obstacles. Caregivers oftentimes receive little acknowledgement for their sacrifice and oftentimes spend so much time caring for themselves, they forget about their own needs. The goal of today's health symposium is to explore, share, and discuss the challenges they face and capabilities available to them. The caregiver journey is a special story, a story of sacrifice, commitment, patience, and love. It is a journey that has personally touched my family and one that I rarely share but can easily relate to. I am the eldest of 4 siblings. I have 2 sisters and a brother. My youngest brother, Nick, was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease before he was 10. It is most commonly seen in children with an incident rate of 0.02%. While the disease is rare in itself, roughly 5% of those diagnosed with this condition develop kidney disease, and less than 1% of those develop total kidney failure. My brother fell into the latter category. 1% of 5% of 0.02%. That is roughly 30 cases a year. While I will tell you that it is that love and support my family received from families, friends, co-workers, doctors, and nurses during those many challenging years, with more ups and downs than I can remember, were invaluable to my parents as caregivers and us as a family. Without that support, I am confident our family would not have made it through those very challenging years, and I would not be here today having the conversation with you. Today's event is for all caregivers, is for all types of caregivers. Those supporting wounded warriors, those supporting children of EFMP, and those supporting elderly parents. For those FRG members in attendance, the hope is that today's event will provide insight into the caregiver journey and make you aware of resources available to assist with your unit. Without further ado, I would like to introduce you to our guest speaker, Ms. Iolani Foray. She is a resident of Hawaii, a fellow of the Elizabeth Dole Foundation, and a caregiver herself. Let's provide her a very warm welcome.
Thank you for having me here today. This is my first speaking engagement as a Elizabeth Dole Foundation Fellow. I am humbled to be chosen as the Hawaii State Representative. And I'm going to first begin with showing a video of what the Elizabeth Dole Foundation, and just to set the stage.
In 2011, at the World War II Memorial, we realized that Bob was having some serious health symptoms and rushed him up to Walter Reed. He was there, hospitalized for 11 months. All around us, there were wounded, ill, injured warriors. Their caregivers were young spouses, the mothers, the dads, the siblings as well. Over those 11 months, we got to know many of them very well, and they were scared. They were really worried. What's going to happen when we leave the hospital? When we're back home, we're alone. They realized they were not trained as caregivers. They are not supportive. I have been given a mission. You know, you've seen it, go do something about it. Wake up, America. Our nation's leaders must stand with America's military caregivers. Thank you. I realized we needed evidence-based research, and so I commissioned the RAND Corporation. They did a 2-year study and told us there are 5.5 million military and veteran caregivers, providing about $14 billion a year as an unpaid workforce.
My father got severely injured in Afghanistan. I was just learning how to take care of myself. Now I'm responsible for a grown adult.
On the days where my husband's having seizures, I'm of course hands-on. I have to administer medication when he's unconscious. I'm a driver, I'm a cook, I am the bill payer, all of those things, and I'm a mom. I'm a mom and John's wife. As a caregiver, you feel like you are literally carrying a 210-pound man through the days emotionally.
Being in a room with caregivers reminds me of how they taught you to be relentless in the military.
He did his part, and now it's my turn to take over for him.
I
Our research tells us that a strong, well-supported caregiver is the #1 way to contribute to the health and recovery of a veteran. We've built a coalition of 300 plus national, local, and regional organizations. We've vastly expanded VA services and support for caregivers.
We have more than 150 caregiver fellows representing all the 50 states and Puerto Rico. We make appointments for them on Capitol Hill with their congressmen and senators and their staffs, and they storm the Hill and they tell their story directly. And they're a great help in terms of getting legislation passed.
I am one voice among many who need consistent and compassionate help as we carry this heavy responsibility caring for our veteran.
We decided to launch the Hidden Heroes campaign to raise awareness of the enormous contributions and challenges of these caregivers. America, these are your hidden heroes. There are millions more.
We've recruited 120 cities, and we're still going across the country to mobilize, educate, and build awareness in home communities for caregivers. We've empowered countless caregivers to be a voice for themselves.
The Elizabeth Dole Foundation has put a face and a name to those who are caring for our wounded, ill, and injured service members. I know I'm not alone. It's a powerful, powerful thing.
The foundation definitely empowered me. I feel like I'm stronger than ever. Kind of like Wonder Woman.
Because of the Elizabeth Dole Foundation, when people think of veterans now, many think of caregivers. How deep is the ocean or how high is the sky? That's how proud I am of my wife, Elizabeth.
The Foundation's legacy will be a shift in culture. An America where caregivers are empowered, they're appreciated, they're listened to. An America where caregivers are really woven into the very fabric of our nation's appreciation for the military. That's what I want the legacy to be.
Okay. So, again, aloha. My name is Ililani Fori, and I am one of the 2019 Dole Caregiver Fellows for the state of Hawaii. Our mission is to support the informal family caregivers of wounded, ill, injured veterans and service members through advocacy, research, and community-driven initiatives. I care for Captain Destin Fori, Purple Heart and Bronze Star recipient, and who was medically separated after serving 16 years active duty in the Army. He suffers from PTSD, TBI, hearing loss, and back and neck injuries. Being a new Dole Fellow, I hope to work with the foundation so that I, myself, can get more educated and be a stronger advocate for my peers across America. Over the years, the foundation has worked with partners of the Department of Veterans Affairs, the Philips Healthcare, in developing a military and veteran caregiver experience map, which outlines the key milestones, emotions, and needs that the caregivers will experience as they care for their loved ones. I am pleased to be here with you guys today, just to go over the experience map, and then kind of give you a tool of the journey that we experience as caregivers. I'm going to be honest, when I first started this journey, I didn't know. I was all over the place. And to see this outline, it gives me a sense that I'm not alone. And that is what you're going to see, is that a lot of us caregivers feel isolated and alone. And we don't know where to turn. Slide 2, please. Before I dive right in, I want to give you just a bit of history of the Elizabeth Dole Foundation to set the context of why the map was created. Senator Elizabeth Dole launched the Elizabeth Dole Foundation in 2012 after witnessing firsthand the caregivers' experience and hardships at Walter Reed Army Medical Center. She saw the families bedside and witnessed the level of care that we were giving to support our loved ones. And she also understood that after leaving and going home, we would still have to provide that level of care, but without the support of the hospital setting. Today, the foundation is a premier organization that is empowering, supporting, and honoring our national's military caregivers who care for America's wounded, ill, and injured veterans of America. We truly are the hidden heroes behind our heroes. Slide 3, please. And I'm sorry, I get a little bit emotional. I'm just a local girl from Hawaii, so I tend to, wear my emotions on my sleeves, and sometimes I can be a hot mess, and I try to get scripted here, and I apologize if my pitching comes a little bit out. But I'm so proud to be up here to tell my story and to let the caregivers know that you guys are seen. We are trying to advocate and educate as much as we can. Okay, slide 3. Sorry, I got kind of thrown off there. Our mission is to strengthen and empower American military caregivers and their families by raising public awareness, driving research, campaigning for policy, and leading the way for collaborations that make a significant impact in military caregivers' lives. Our vision is that in America, where caregivers are empowered and appreciated and recognized for their service to this nation. Before I go on, I would like to just take a moment to give our military caregivers a round of applause, please. Slide 4, please. That is slide 4, sorry. Okay, the first thing that Senator Dole did after forming the foundation was to commission the RAND Corporation to conduct research in the military caregiver population. What the study unveiled in 2014, it gave us the best understanding of who these caregivers were and who they're caring for and what support they needed. If you're interested in reading the full report, it's available on our website at www.elizabethdolefoundation.org. Slide 5, please. So what did the RAND study tell us? The RAND study found that there are 5.5 million military and veteran caregivers serving across the nation, and that number is climbing. These are spouses, family members, and other loved ones who are experiencing great physical, emotional, and family strain. And far too often, these caregivers are alone. Many caregivers are frequently the sole breadwinner for their families. Most are balancing the responsibilities of managing a household, childcare, legal, and financial challenges, and a complex medical conditions of their care recipients. This results in higher rates of anxiety, depression, and deteriorating health for the caregivers themselves. Slide 6, please. The study was able to break down the demographics of military caregivers as well. We know that among pre-9/11 caregivers, those caring for someone who who exited military service prior to 9/11, the child is most commonly the caregiver. They tend to be older and their care recipient is less likely to have a VA rating. Among post-9/11 caregivers, those caring for someone who exited service after 9/11, the spouse is most commonly the caregivers. Note that I said most commonly. Spouses make up about a third of the post-9/11 caregiver population, with the rest being a combination of parents, siblings, children, friends, and other family members. they are most likely to not have an established support network. They are more likely to be caring for someone with a behavioral health conditions. Slide 7, please. On this slide, you may see the breakdown of the medical conditions of care recipients in the US. One interesting side note, the RAND study not only studied military caregivers, but also civilian caregivers as a point of comparison. This makes it one of the only national representative studies as a civilian caregivers in the US. You'll see from this chart that the conditions of the post 9/11 cohort have higher levels of brain injury, mental health conditions, and the pre-9/11 than that of the pre-9/11 care recipients. The pre-9/11 care recipients are more likely to have chronic conditions and other physical disabling conditions where their issues may certainly link back to their service. Thank you. Yeah. Apparently I suffer from, having Hanabata come down my nose, which is, mucus, so sorry. While these issues may certainly link that to their service, they are compounded by the natural effects of aging as well. This tells us that we also need to be thinking about the long-term health of the post 9/11 care recipient, who will no doubt will experience similar or even worse effects as they age. Slides 8 and 9, please. The next two slides are particularly interesting to me because they show the activities that military caregivers perform on behalf of their care recipients. You notice that the military caregivers as a whole tend to perform similar or fewer levels of ADLs and AIDLs than civilian caregivers. So why the military caregivers? Why a targeted population for us? Why support them directly? If they're experiencing the same burden as civilian caregivers. A couple reasons. One being that military caregivers are also supporting their care recipients with safety and supervision. An element of support not captured in these charts. Care recipients with cognitive processing issues related to traumatic brain injury or PTSD might need help with cooking or driving. But not because they can't physically do it. It's more safety. It's because, take for instance, something that I commonly have an issue with. My husband will go to cook. He forgets to turn off the stove. It could lead to a possible house fire. Or sometimes I thought that maybe he just didn't want to cook. But I'm learning from the study that it's a cognitive issue. Military caregivers are also handling care recipients with very complex care needs across medical conditions, as well as entirely different healthcare and benefit system that we have to navigate, that we had no experience with. And finally, which I will get into a minute with the experience map, military caregivers struggle to self-identify as caregivers, partially because they enter the journey in so many unique ways. If you think about caregivers for, let's say, a person with Alzheimer's, once they have the official diagnosis, they have somewhat of a defined journey as to where they're going and how they're going to care for that person. And I'm not by any means insulting Alzheimer's caregivers. Caregiving is an incredible, difficult job, emotionally, physically, and financially for all of us. But being a military caregiver, we are thrown with constant medical conditions that can manifest at any given time. Things that we didn't know that they had suddenly becomes an issue that we're just not educated to understand. And as a military caregiver, you could be caring with an amputee, somebody that has PTSD, and later on down the road, ALS, service connected down the line. All three of these diagnoses they could have at once. And you care them sometimes when they're still military connected, or you meet them when they're separated from the military. You might be caring for them towards the end of life, or you might be a 20-year-old spouse who later have to take care of them for 60 years or more. So you see, there are all kinds of different ways that someone can end up as a military caregiver. It's kind of a confusing system to navigate. I've had issues with navigating the system. And, you know, I hope with things like this that we are all working together to do better. We have to. And that's why I'm so happy that this foundation exists. It supports the caregivers along the journey. For so long, I mean, there's a lot of organizations that still focus on veterans. And from what I understand, that this is one of the main organizations that support the military caregivers. We're educating and advocating. We see us. And my hope together is that all the organizations that are here today, that you take time and you recognize the caregivers around you, and with the experience map, you get to see where they are in their journey. And hopefully you step in on where is the crisis points in that journey. Slide 10, please. Okay, so let's dive in. And if you guys have any questions for me, I hope you guys can save it for me when I'm sitting on this panel here as I go through my slides. So slide 11. So like all of our work in Elizabeth Dole Foundation, this project is rooted in a research. The baseline map was created with data points pulled from two of the different foundations. The Commission ran studies, Hidden Heroes, America's Military Caregivers 2014, Improving Support for Americans Hidden Heroes 2017. From there, we brought together several key partners, including Department of Veterans Affairs, the RAND Corporation, Give an Hour, AARP, Wounded Warrior Project, Fisher House Foundation, American Red Cross to engage with and to add to the maps. Using a co-create approach led by Phillips through a series of design sessions, the core working group helped develop the framework for the journey map. And with them, the key research data was pulled together. Finally, we validated our approach with the people that matter most, the caregivers. At our annual convening in 2017, we brought together 400 partners, subject matter experts and caregivers, and invited them to comment on the map based on their own experience with the military caregiver population. Throughout 2018, we incorporated the feedback we received from our convening and drafted the version of the map that I am showing you today. Slide 12, please. This is a new map. So as you can tell, this was truly a demanding process. And the product that we started with was not what we ended up with. One of the first things we did in designing the map was to articulate that we hoped to get out of the exercise. The insight from the November conference told us that the work was valuable in recognizing the caregiver as the center of their own journey. It provided a common language and a structure for those seeking to understand the emotional and physical impact that the caregiver has on someone. But we needed it to be more. We needed it to be a pathway to action, both for caregivers seeking to improve their own lives and the support systems trying to lessen the burden. Imagine you're in a dark room. You can feel around your surroundings, and you might be able to identify a lamp, a door, or a closet. You might stub your toe a few times or bump your hip across a table. In this dark room, you can start to understand the items around you, but you don't know how these items relate to the room itself. For a long time, the military and the veteran caregiver support space has been like that dark room. This isn't criticism. Over the past 10 years, recognition and resources for caregivers has grown tremendously across the public, private, and nonprofit sectors. We have been building these resources without context, without considering the full burden of the caregiver experience. We have been creating support for caregivers and at isolated points in time without considering where the caregiver has come from or where they are going. This map aims to change that by mapping the key points with the right people and organizations and service providers. It can be a step in where the support needs for caregivers, to help them adapt to the way of life and to help achieve better outcomes for our veterans and our hidden heroes. Slide 13, please. So what are our goals? We wanted to understand the caregiver journey, including the different stages and landmarks, events during each stage of the journey, describe the role of family caregiver, normalize their experiences so that they don't feel alone and think that, oh my gosh, I'm going crazy, I don't know what I'm doing. It gives us a sense that it's kind of normal. Like this is our new normal. It raises awareness and educates the community on the challenges caregivers have along the journey, help caregivers navigate and plan for the journey in front of them, identify opportunities for intervention along the journey where service providers can offer support and services. Slide 14, please. After defining our objectives, we started to build out our map. First, we identified 3 overarching stages of the journey: becoming aware and adjusting, shifting priorities and seeking help, and finding a rhythm. Each of the 3 stages are unique experiences, and them in and of themselves, and caregivers experience different events, emotions, and needs in each stage. Slide 15.
During the first stage, becoming aware and adjusting, caregivers may start to notice changes in their veteran or service member's health or behavior. These changes may start with or may begin many years after a veteran's service is ended. As a result, the dynamic of their relationship may also change. These changes may happen suddenly or over a period of time. Whether their loved one is experiencing a wound, injury, or illness, it is normal for a caregiver to feel uncertain about what lies ahead. During this time, caregivers will often take on more household activities in an attempt to maintain balance at home, and will begin to research the symptoms and behaviors of their veteran or service member. As caregivers adjust to the changes in their loved ones, they will begin to seek more direct support for their needs. For more information on this stage of the caregiver journey, check out the interactive map at caregiverjourney.org.
Okay. As you heard in the video, becoming aware and adjusting catalogs the period of time where caregivers are just starting to realize that there's something wrong with their loved one. This can be all of 5 minutes, that they get their call from the service member has been taken to the hospital after being wounded in action, or it can manifest days, months, years, especially those caring for traumatic brain injury. We come to grips with the concerning behavior changes and the mounting health issues. In this first stage, caregivers might distance themselves from their family or friends while they're trying to figure out what is going on. They might take more and more responsibilities around the house. They're more likely to feel overwhelmed and have a sense of uncertainty or stress of what is in hold for their future. When I first entered this journey, I was not fully aware. A lot of it was denial. I thought, no big deal. My husband isn't as bad, doesn't have any massive physical wounds. But that was a lie. It's more invisible wounds. I wasn't prepared, nor was I educated in any of the medical issues that my husband has to face. I isolated myself, just trying to keep my head above water. I had so much resentment. I had no clue to care for him while trying to balance everything that I had at home. I felt like I was just failing in everything I did. The last thing we did in each stage of this journey is we added a turning point to represent the transition of the caregiver into the next phase. For becoming aware and adjusting, most caregivers will have some sort of crisis or breaking point that causes them to stop just to maintain and think that their normal is normal. It pushes us to seek more complex support for their veterans and themselves. What was my crisis turning point is I didn't want my husband to be a statistic. I didn't want him to feel like he was a burden. After all he's done to serve this country, that was my breaking point. To see the turmoil that my bitterness and resentment that happened to my husband spill through onto my children, that was my crisis. That was my breaking point to seek a change. Slide 17, please.
During the second stage, shifting priorities and seeking help, caregivers take on an increased responsibility as part of caring for their veteran or service member and begin to seek assistance. As they start to take on more caregiving roles and responsibilities, they often experience changes in their day-to-day life and uncertainty about the path ahead. Caregivers may also feel frustrated as they navigate complex healthcare systems and resources as an advocate for their loved ones. As caregivers progress through this phase and their loved one's treatment plan comes together, they often feel more confident in their ability to navigate the journey that lies ahead. For more information on this stage of the caregiver journey, check out the interactive map at caregiverjourney.org.
As you can tell from this video, the shifting priorities and seeking help is at this time in this map, we caregivers are hungry for seeking information to help us with our journey. We are managing the bulk of the loved one's healthcare, managing medications and appointments, and navigating a complex healthcare system. We may feel frustrated through this stage as we search for answers and have to make some permanent changes to our personal lives to accommodate our new. This is a stage where a caregiver is proactively reaching out for support. In this time period, when service providers have probably the greatest chance of impacting our futures. The support of the caregiver receives at this time, or lack of support, may change how confident that we are. At this time in my journey, the first organization that I reached out to was Wounded Warrior Project. We started getting social again with other veteran families. And I wanted to say a big mahalo to the Wounded Warrior Project and AUSAA for putting on the NACOA event. This was our, kind of like our ticket out of our dark room for a long time. We were pretty much isolating ourselves, trying to navigate this journey. And this helped us to put in contact with other resources and to be around other veteran families who were going through similar journeys as us, and that we didn't feel alone. Slide 19.
Finding a rhythm. Caregivers begin to emerge from the survival mode that characterized the previous phases and find their rhythm. As caregivers continue to define their new normal, they will still experience ongoing uncertainty about the future, but they will also develop tools to help them respond to new challenges, increase their confidence in outreach and advocacy, and establish their own support network. Caregiving is an ever-evolving continuum, and for many military caregivers, it is a journey that they will continue on for a long time. And while caregivers will still experience new challenges and face setbacks, they will also collect the resources and knowledge they need to feel empowered to face those challenges head-on and to one day thrive. For more information on this stage of the caregiver journey, check out the interactive map at caregiverjourney.org.
In finding a rhythm, caregivers exit some of the crisis mode of the previous two stages and begin to establish their new normal. In this stage, caregivers may still feel an uncertainty about their future, but they should also have an established support system that they can help with through the uncertainty. And just because they have a support system, that doesn't mean that caregivers won't slip back and forth between the stages. And that's why the map is a circle, to show that you can go back and forth along the journey. Your veteran might receive another diagnosis, you might get sick, you might get a new doctor who doesn't understand you as well. There are a pyramid of things that affect the journey. But if we do our jobs right, then the caregivers will get to a place where they feel like they're not just surviving, but thriving. Slide 21, please. Where am I in this journey? I believe that I'm in stage 2, to be perfectly honest. And this is my prime reason of why I chose to apply for the Dole Fellowship. I'm deeply honored and humbled that I was chosen, so that I may educate and advocate for myself and also for my peers. When I first started this journey as a caregiver, I was all over the place with emotions, and as you can see, I still am. And I did not fully understand the weight of it all. This journey map is evidence that I am not alone, and that when I feel resentment and bitterness at different stages, that is expected and normal during these difficult times. As we learn more of the caregiving experience, we wanted to continue to keep the map fresh and relevant. And we will continue to update the map in the weeks, months, and years to come to ensure that we have the most up-to-date and that we are able to represent the caregivers of America. We are hopeful that we can continue working with all of you to have a better understanding to where everybody fits in this caregiver journey, and know that hopefully you can use this tool to figure out where is the best fit and where we can support our hidden heroes. And with that, my time with you all comes to a close, and I want to just leave you with a model that I say to myself every day, and I think this can pertain to everyone in this room. Let's do good, but be better. Mahalo nui for having me today. And like I said, I apologize for being a hot mess. Hopefully I did good. But, and we'll see everybody at the Nokoa. Thank you.